In the quiet corners of the anime world, there are moments not defined by action or spectacle, but by the stillness they leave behind. Moments where wisdom speaks softly, and the heart leans in to listen. One such moment rests in the words of Prince Zuko's uncle, Iroh, from Avatar, The Last Airbender, a series that, while not Japanese anime in origin, is forever interwoven with the spirit of the medium. The moment is simple, quiet, but lasting. It is the wisdom of letting go of shame and seeking the path of light, even after wandering in darkness. And it begins with a cup of tea and a tired soul. Uncle Iroh sits calmly beneath the shade of a tree, steam rising from a modest clay teapot. His hands, weathered but steady, pour warm tea into a pair of cups, and beside him sits a boy conflicted, Zuko, whose path is fractured with anger and pain. It is here, in the space between boiling water and spoken truths, that Iroh utters the quiet wisdom that has rippled through the hearts of countless viewers. Pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame. The words do not come with the thud of revelation or the gleam of sudden transformation. Instead, they settle like dew upon the morning grass, delicate, unnoticed by many, but deeply nourishing to those who stop to feel them. The world does not pause for this moment, but within it lies a clarity so profound that even the chaos of Zuko's inner turmoil seems to quiet in response. Iroh's voice carries not only years of wandering and war, but a quiet love, the kind of love that expects nothing in return, only that it be heard, gently and patiently. For Iroh, the wisdom he shares is not a command, but an offering. He has known shame. He has carried the weight of his own past, the loss of his son, the blindness of his former ambitions, the bitter taste of power once craved. And from these sorrows, he has distilled something gentle, not forgiveness from others, but a peaceful reconciliation with himself. In his tea, in his gardening, in his singing beneath the moonlight, Iroh shows that life's harshest truths can still be met with a soft heart. Zuko does not immediately understand. How could he? He is still walking the edge of his own shadow, still reaching for a destiny shaped by pride and fear. But in that moment, with the scent of tea curling through the air and the sun dappling through leaves, something small and important is planted. A seed, one that will grow only in silence, only in time. Iroh does not press it. He merely continues pouring tea, as if the act itself is a form of faith. In the stillness of this exchange, we are reminded that wisdom is not always loud. It does not seek applause or recognition. Sometimes it sits quietly beside us and waits until we are ready to listen. Iroh's wisdom is not in his strength or his title, but in his choice to lead with softness. His battles are no longer fought with fire, but with kindness. And in this moment, we are invited to consider the battles within ourselves, not with swords or shouting, but with the gentle work of seeing our pain without turning it into armor. There is a deeper lesson here, one that transcends even the world of Avatar. Shame, so often misunderstood, is not healed through defiance or denial. It is not something we conquer by proving others wrong. It is something that dissolves when we surrender our pride, when we admit our faults without letting them define us. In a culture of constant striving and self-image, this truth glows like a lantern in the dark. Humility, Iroh teaches us, is not weakness. It is clarity. It is the courage to be at peace with what is imperfect inside us. And so, this first moment rests like a soft beginning to a quiet journey. It reminds us that sometimes the wisest words are the ones whispered over tea, shared under trees, and spoken with love that neither demands nor judges. In the presence of Uncle Iroh, we are all given permission to forgive ourselves, to step away from the mask of pride, and instead walk the path of quiet growth. It is not an easy path, but it is a true one. And sometimes that is all we need. As the light fades and the tea cools, the moment lingers in the hush between words. Iroh's soft eyes, filled with sadness and warmth, turn back to the world, not with bitterness, but with hope. And in that stillness, in that simplicity, we are reminded that the most lasting wisdom often arrives in the gentlest forms. A shared cup, a patient friend, a single sentence left hanging like mist in the morning air. Let yourself breathe with this moment. Let it settle like leaves drifting in a quiet stream. And as you rest tonight, may the voice of Iroh echo softly in your heart, that true humility is the beginning of peace, and that even the most tangled past can give way to a new dawn. In the haze of neon Genesis, Evangelion's shifting landscapes, and fragmented psyches, there comes a moment so fleeting and tender that it brushes against the heart like a passing breeze. It arrives not with thunder or revelation, but with guidance and stillness, tucked within the last words of a boy who simply smiles before letting go. Kaworu Nagisa, enigmatic, angelic, ephemeral, enters Shinji Ikari's life like the soft bloom of moonlight across a dark ocean. And in his presence, there is something strangely peaceful, something that whispers, even amid chaos, there can be acceptance. Kaworu's wisdom is not grand or didactic. He does not deliver his truths with the weight of age or the insistence of a teacher. Instead, he is gentle, observant, and unwaveringly kind. And in his short time alongside Shinji, he offers a lesson wrapped in the smallest of gestures, a hand reaching out, a quiet smile, and the subtle understanding that every soul deserves to be seen and loved as they are. In a world fractured by expectation, rejection, and trauma, Kaworu brings a stillness that Shinji has never known. He does not demand change. He does not criticize. He simply accepts. In one of their final moments together, as the broken machinery of fate grinds on, Kaworu looks at Shinji and speaks softly. "It is my destiny to live forever. But if my death can save you, then I gladly give my life." And there, in that breathless silence between what could be and what must be, Kaworu chooses peace. He chooses to place Shinji's humanity above his own divinity. He chooses the beauty of choice over the comfort of survival. And in that moment, we are invited to reflect on what it means to offer unconditional love, even at great personal cost. Shinji, who has spent so much of his life begging to be seen, to be loved, to be told he matters, finds in Kaworu not a savior, but a mirror, someone who does not recoil from his darkness, someone who does not demand he be stronger or braver or less broken, someone who simply sits beside him and says, "I like you just the way you are." In a story brimming with pain and the tangled weight of human emotion, this act is more powerful than any battle. It is healing, born not of solution, but of acceptance. Kaworu's presence, fleeting as it is, reveals that wisdom can come from the willingness to be still in someone else's suffering. To exist beside them, not to fix, but to understand. His calmness is not apathy, it is grace. And through him, we see that sometimes the wisest thing we can do is simply accept the truth of another's pain without shrinking from it. We do not always need to have answers. Sometimes we need only to stay. For Shinji, who drowns in self-loathing and uncertainty, Kaworu's trust becomes a lifeline. It doesn't erase the darkness, but it offers a star to steer by. It is the first time he is seen without conditions, not as a pilot, not as a tool, not as someone who needs to be more, just as himself. And though Kaworu's death is inevitable, a note written long before their song began, what remains after is something gentle, something soft, a memory of kindness that outlives the moment itself. In the world outside the anime, this moment resonates in quiet hearts who have felt invisible or unworthy. Kaworu's acceptance becomes a whisper to anyone who has wondered if they are enough. His wisdom is not about changing the world. It is about changing how we see each other, about choosing love, even when it's not returned, about offering warmth, even when it cannot be kept, about trusting that what we give freely still matters, even if it vanishes in the next breath. There is something achingly beautiful about that kind of love, not one rooted in possession or certainty, but in a kind of spiritual generosity. Kaworu doesn't try to hold on. He lets go, willingly, peacefully. His wisdom lies in the idea that sometimes love is not about staying, but about giving someone the strength to continue without you. And for Shinji, even though grief soon follows, that brief moment of connection becomes something sacred. a place within himself that tells him he is not alone. In this second chapter of our quiet reflection, we are reminded that wisdom often takes the form of presence, that to sit beside someone in silence, to listen without fixing, to accept without altering, that is a kind of bravery. Kaworu's legacy is not the battle he didn't fight, but the love he gave freely. And in that soft, echoing truth, we find a light to carry with us, a lantern to hold through our own shadows. In a world built on conflict and haunted by shadows, Jiraiya of the Sannin walks with a lightness that belies the weight of everything he has seen. He is a man of contradictions, a wandering fool and a silent observer, a boisterous joker and a relentless seeker of peace. Yet beneath the laughter and his playful peeking, there rests a soul forged in sorrow and tempered by wisdom. The kind of wisdom that doesn't always come from age, but from having stumbled again and again and still choosing to rise with a smile. His is the story of endurance, of hope unshaken by the tide of loss, and of the quiet decision to believe in people, even when the world gives you every reason not to. There is a moment that captures Jiraiya's wisdom in full clarity, not in battle, but in reflection. After years of wandering, failing, training students, only to watch them fall to darkness or die too young, he sits alone by the fire. The night air carries the quiet rustle of trees and the distant sound of crickets. But inside him, there is only the endless echo of questions unanswered. Why couldn't he save Orochimaru? Why did Nagato, once a boy with gentle eyes, turn into the very monster he was meant to defy? And above all, why does he still believe? Jiraiya's answer doesn't come with grand certainty. It comes like a whispered thought. A person grows up when he's able to overcome hardships. Protection is important, but there are some things a person must learn on their own. It is not a line meant to inspire armies or transform the fate of nations. It is a soft admission that the world cannot always be held together by one man's hands. That love and guidance, no matter how pure, do not always yield perfect outcomes. But still, he chooses to believe, not in perfection, but in potential. This belief is what sets Jiraiya apart. Not just that he hoped his students would do good, but that he loved them even when they didn't. That he could look at the ruins of his own efforts, at Orochimaru's betrayal, at Nagato's devastation, and still choose not to curse the world, but to understand it, to learn from it. His wisdom is one of softness, not of surrender. It's the kind that accepts pain without letting it harden the heart. In Naruto, Jiraiya finds not just a student, but the embodiment of all his old hopes. A knuckle-headed boy with a loud voice and a louder heart. And though he teaches Naruto jutsu, summoning, and discipline, his true gift is subtler. It is the gift of legacy, not in technique, but in spirit. Jiraiya's wisdom flows through Naruto, not as words, but as resilience, a belief passed down like a candle's flame, burning not with certainty, but with persistence. In Naruto, he sees the chance to get it right, not because Naruto is perfect, but because he never stops getting up. Jiraiya once dreamed of writing a tale of true peace, not for fame or recognition, but as a roadmap to a gentler world. His writing was his way of searching for meaning, even when war left him with none. It was how he reached for peace without knowing exactly how to grasp it. And though his life ends before that dream can be fulfilled, it is Naruto who picks up the unfinished pages and writes the ending. That is Jiraiya's wisdom in its truest form, not to complete the story, but to plant it in someone else's heart. When Jiraiya meets his end in the hidden rain, facing the very student he once believed in, there is no bitterness in him, only reflection. Even as his body weakens and the tide of pain surges, his mind is calm. His last moments are not spent cursing fate, but writing a final message. He carves it into the back of a dying frog's body, not as a desperate cry for help, but as a quiet hope that someone, anyone, might pick up where he left off. And in that final act, there is no fear. Only a man, smiling faintly, knowing that he did what he could, that maybe, just maybe, it was enough. There is a cuffed kind of wisdom in Jiraiya's death that lingers long after the episode ends, not in the spectacle of battle or the weight of tragedy, but in his calm acceptance. He does not die with regrets, even though his life was full of failure. He dies with the understanding that imperfection is not failure, that loving people who let you down is not weakness, that trying, even when the world tells you not to, is a form of courage too often overlooked. Jiraiya teaches us that wisdom is not always about knowing the right answer, but about choosing the right question. How do we keep loving the world, even when it hurts us? How do we continue to hope, even when our dreams fall apart? How do we pass on something good, even if we'll never live to see it bloom? These are not questions that yield easy answers, but they are the questions that lead to a different kind of strength, the strength to live with an open heart. His legacy is not written in stone, but in the people he touched, in Naruto, in Tsunade, in the memories of readers who watched him stumble and laugh and keep going anyway, and in this third whisper of wisdom, we are reminded that sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is believe in ourselves, in others, and in the stories still being written. Let the stillness of Jiraiya's belief drift through you now, like the hush of leaves at dusk. His journey was not without sorrow, but it was never without meaning. And in that quiet balance, there lies something you can carry into your own dreams. The knowledge that even when things fall apart, even when nothing goes as planned, there is still value in the trying, still grace in the persistence, still wisdom in the simple act of passing the torch and trusting that someone will carry it forward. In a world full of clamor and color, where every story seems to rise with noise and fall with thunder, Ginkgo walks softly through the mist. His footsteps are barely audible against the earth, his presence more like a breeze than a storm. And yet, wherever he goes, something changes. Not dramatically, not violently, but like a seed settling into soil, his presence shifts things gently. Ginkgo does not shout. He listens. He observes. And in doing so, he reveals a wisdom so delicate that it can only be seen when the world is quiet enough to notice it. Ginkgo is not a warrior or a sage in any traditional sense. He is a wanderer, a man with a single eye and a pocket full of dried herbs, traveling from village to village with the patience of moss creeping across stone. His work is with the mushi, ethereal life forms that exist somewhere between spirit and biology, older than memory, often unseen. Most people don't notice them until something goes wrong, until a child forgets how to speak, or a forest grows silent, or a light begins to flicker in someone's eyes. Ginkgo arrives then, not with judgment, but with understanding. There's a quiet lesson in every encounter he has, not just about the mushi, but about people, and about how often the roots of a problem lie not in malice or failure, but in misunderstanding. A man blinds himself to avoid the glow of a mushi that feeds on his sight. A child disappears into dreams because waking life is too cruel. A mother holds on to a whisper of her dead child, not knowing the mushi is feeding on her grief. In every case, Ginkgo approaches with the same soft firmness, to see the truth without rushing to control it, to help without forcing, and to remind people that sometimes peace means letting go. One of the most profound things Ginkgo teaches is that not every problem needs to be solved the way we expect. In one village, the trees are withering and people are falling ill. The mushi are blamed, as they often are. But Ginkgo doesn't exterminate or destroy. He studies. He listens to the land, to the rhythm of breath and wind and memory. He finds that the mushi are reacting to imbalance, not causing it. By restoring the flow of nature, not through violence, but understanding, the sickness fades. And in this, Ginkgo shows us a gentle kind of wisdom, that the world is not a machine to be fixed, but a living harmony to be tended. There's another lesson in how he carries solitude. Ginkgo is always moving, not because he is lost, but because he understands that his presence can disrupt the natural balance. The mushi are drawn to him, and so he does not stay long in one place. He does not seek pity or companionship. He accepts his role, his oddness, and continues forward. But that solitude is not sadness. It is a chosen rhythm, a respectful space between himself and the world. And through that, he teaches us how to live with what we carry, not to be crushed by our burdens, but to walk with them lightly, without bitterness. His conversations are rarely dramatic. They unfold like leaves, slow and soft. He speaks to those suffering with a tone that neither condescends nor inflames. He offers knowledge, not answers, guidance, not commands. And this is perhaps his greatest wisdom, that to truly help someone, you must see them, not just their problems. You must trust them to make their own peace. He offers stories, not solutions, because he knows that stories are what linger, what change people when they are ready. There is a particular moment, small and quiet, when Ginkgo sits beside a child who is losing their memories to a mushi. The child is frightened, but Ginkgo does not try to scare the mushi away with force. Instead, he tells a story about the way memories are like rivers, always flowing, sometimes split, sometimes swallowed by the sea. He tells the child that forgetting is not always losing. Sometimes it is the mind's way of healing. The child listens, calms, breathes. The mushi fades. In that exchange, nothing explodes, nothing is conquered, but something is understood. And in that understanding, there is healing. Ginkgo's life is not about glory or transformation. It is about presence, about tending to the quiet places and respecting the boundaries of the unseen. He walks through a world that others rush past, and in doing so, he catches truths that would otherwise be lost in the noise. His path is not one of conquest or fame, but of balance. And in his quiet devotion to that balance, there is a kind of peace that settles into the heart like gentle rain. When you lie awake at night, thoughts swirling, breath quickened by the demands of the day, Ginkgo's wisdom offers an invitation to slow down, to soften, to listen. Not everything needs to be fixed. Not every mystery needs an answer right now. Sometimes, the kindest thing we can do, for others, for ourselves, is to make space, to sit beside our fears without flinching, to see them, name them, and gently let them pass. As you close your eyes, imagine that forest mist settling around you. Imagine the sound of Ginkgo's footsteps in the damp earth, the whisper of wind in tall grass, the distant glint of a mushi drifting like a lantern through the dark. Let his calm presence remind you that wisdom doesn't always shout. Sometimes it breathes. Sometimes it waits. And sometimes it simply walks quietly through the world, trusting that the smallest kindness can carry the deepest truth. In a world devoured by giants and haunted by the roar of destruction, Levi Ackerman stands as a sentinel of control. He does not yell. He does not boast. He does not crack under pressure. Instead, he sharpens his silence into something stronger than steel. His every movement is precise, his eyes like blades honed by grief, and his voice, when he uses it, carries the weight of 1,000 unshed tears. Levi does not speak often, but when he does, it is never to fill the silence. It is to cut through it, to deliver truths that most would rather bury. And in those rare moments, a quiet wisdom emerges, built not from lectures or ideals, but from surviving things that should have broken him. Levi has known loss deeper than most. Friends, comrades, mentors, each name etched like a scar across the inside of his soul. He carries them not with bitterness, but with a stoic reverence, like candles lit in an endless night. Petra, Oluo, Eld, Gunther, Furlan, Isabel. Names that never echo on the battlefield anymore, but still walk beside him in every decision. And yet, Levi does not falter. His strength is not just in the way he moves, or how quickly he can end a fight. It is in the restraint of his rage, the discipline of his grief, and the dignity he gives to every fallen comrade by continuing on without letting hatred consume him. There is a moment, simple but unforgettable, that reveals the core of Levi's wisdom. After losing yet another friend to the endless tide of battle, someone looks to him for reassurance, for a speech, perhaps, or for comfort. But Levi offers none of that. He simply kneels down, gently folds the dead soldier's hands over their chest, and mutters, "We'll keep moving, for your sake." No fireworks, no declarations of revenge, just the promise of continuation, the promise that the living will carry the burden of the dead, not by avenging them with fire, but by enduring the weight of survival with grace. This is Levi's way. He doesn't seek vengeance as an end. He doesn't fall into the trap of believing that the world owes him justice. He knows that the world, more often than not, is indifferent. That justice, like peace, is something humans must carve out of cruelty with quiet, stubborn determination. And still, he chooses not to hate the world, not to give in to the coldness he has every right to feel. He remains present, grounded, alert, not out of naivety, but because he knows that when everyone else loses themselves, someone needs to stay standing. Levi also carries with him the wisdom of restraint, a kind rarely recognized in the chaos of war. He holds back when others lash out. He observes when others panic. He waits, always watching, always measuring. His silence is not emptiness, but strategy. There's a lesson in how he handles Aaron, especially in the early days. He doesn't coddle him, doesn't treat him like a hero, nor does he reject him outright for being different. He tests him, yes, pushes him, but all the while he listens, watches, tries to understand, because Levi knows that people aren't defined by what they are, but by what they choose to do. And in that quiet patience, he teaches us to withhold judgment, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. In another moment, After the devastating loss of comrades during a mission, someone demands to know why Levi didn't choose a different path, why he didn't save someone else, why things had to happen the way they did. And Levi, bearing the full weight of guilt he'll never show, responds simply, "I made a choice. It doesn't matter what could have been." It is not coldness that guides these words, but acceptance, a recognition that life cannot be undone, that mistakes cannot be rewound, and that the only way forward is forward, without self-indulgent regret, but also without forgetting. Levi teaches us that strength does not always roar. Sometimes it's the choice to keep your eyes open when you want to close them, to stand when your knees tremble, to lead when your heart is splintering. His every decision, every step, is one taken with a full understanding of the cost. And that awareness is what makes him not just a soldier, but a deeply human force in an inhuman world. He also shows, in subtle ways, that kindness can live beneath even the hardest shell. The way he brushes dust off a fallen comrade's coat, the way he tells a dying friend that they did well, even if the mission failed, the way he offers no empty promises, but always gives his best effort. Levi doesn't show affection like most people. He doesn't speak of love or comfort openly. But in his actions, precise, intentional, unwavering, there is a profound depth of care. And that, too, is wisdom. That love is not just words spoken in easy times, but the effort we give when it would be easier to give up. As you settle into the quiet of your own space now, let Levi's stillness wash over you like a blanket pulled snug around your shoulders. Let his silence remind you that you do not need to solve every problem tonight. You do not need to fix every mistake. All you need is the willingness to keep going, to carry your burdens without letting them become walls between you and the world. Because like Levi, you are not defined by what you've lost, but by how you choose to keep moving, with strength that does not shout, but endures. Let the breath slow. Let the heartbeat soften. Let the quiet strength of Levi Ackerman steady your thoughts as the stars begin to blink open above the horizon of your mind. There is a wisdom in that silence, and tonight you are safe within it, in a world brimming with curses and cruelty, where monstrous forces twist the laws of nature into terrifying shapes. Satoru Gojo stands as an anomaly, a man whose very existence bends the rules, with eyes that shimmer like collapsing galaxies, and a presence that demands attention even in stillness. Gojo is undeniably powerful, the kind of power that few can comprehend, the kind that isolates, elevates, and burdens. But beneath the confident grin and the casual arrogance lies a deeper truth, a quiet wisdom shaped not by his might, but by the loneliness it brings and the choices he makes despite it. Gojo has been told since he was young that he is the strongest, that no one could reach him, that no enemy could touch him, no curse could rival him. At first, he wore that truth like armor. He believed it, laughed with it, flaunted it like a weapon. But as the years passed, the cracks in that armor began to show. Not because he was weaker than expected, but because strength like his is isolating. It creates a distance, invisible but impossible to cross, even between friends. And Gojo, for all his brilliance, began to realize that being the strongest also meant being the most alone. There's wisdom in how he responds to that loneliness. He doesn't retreat, doesn't wall himself off or become bitter. Instead, he teaches. He jokes. He opens himself up to ridicule and affection, to frustration and vulnerability. He takes on students, not because he needs to, but because he wants to build a future where he isn't the only one standing at the top. A future where others can rise beside him, not beneath him. And in that choice, in that persistent effort to raise others while knowing it will never truly lessen his own burden, lies a profound kind of wisdom. Gojo once said, almost offhandedly, "I alone am the honored one." It sounds arrogant at first, like something a man intoxicated with power would say. But if you listen closely, there's something mournful behind the words, a recognition that he stands alone, not out of desire, but out of design. The honored one, not the loved one, not the understood one, just the one who remains standing when all others fall. And in that solitude, he finds purpose not in domination, but in protection. He trains the next generation not just to fight, but to think, to question, to challenge authority and demand more from a broken system. He sees the corruption embedded within the jujutsu world and doesn't look away, doesn't accept it as an unchangeable truth. Instead, he becomes a thorn in its side, a disruption, a constant reminder that power without compassion is meaningless. His defiance, his humor, even his seemingly reckless behavior, all of it is intentional. All of it is a strategy to shake the world out of complacency and carve a new path for those who will come after him. There's a quiet moment between battles, in the midst of war, when Gojo simply sits with his students. No jokes, no flashy words, no grand declarations, just silence, presence. And in that stillness, there's more comfort than any speech could offer. Because Gojo understands that what the world needs sometimes is not a hero to fix everything, but someone who refuses to look away, someone who stays, who shows up, who teaches others to fight even when they're afraid. Gojo's wisdom also shows in his understanding of limits, not his own, but the limits of others. He never expects his students to become him, never demands that they mirror his strength. Instead, he urges them to become the best versions of themselves, even if those versions are wildly different. He celebrates individuality, encourages exploration, and even in moments of terrible loss or disappointment, he doesn't shut down. He allows his heart to break quietly behind those endless eyes, and then picks up the pieces and moves forward again. It would be easy for someone like Gojo to become cold, detached, invulnerable in more ways than just physically. But he resists that, actively. Every sarcastic comment, every absurd joke, every overly dramatic pose, it's not just theater. It's a rebellion against the loneliness that power tries to impose. It's a way of reminding others, and himself, that even the strongest are still human, still need laughter, still need warmth, still need someone to say, "I'm here." In the darkness of night, when the world slows and the shadows grow longer, it's easy to imagine Gojo walking alone through empty streets, his blindfold concealing a gaze that never stops observing. But even in solitude, he is never truly disconnected, because his life, his purpose, is tied to others, to his students, to the people he swore to protect, to a future he believes in, even if he may not live to see it. That belief, that stubborn, radiant hope, is perhaps his wisest quality. So as you lie here now, settling into the soft rhythm of your breath and the hush of the world around you, let Gojo's lesson wrap around you like a comforting blanket. Let the weight he carries remind you that being strong doesn't mean being invulnerable. That power is not about towering over others, but lifting them up. That the loneliest road can still be lit with laughter, with courage, and with the quiet wisdom of choosing love in a world of chaos. And in the silence between your thoughts, as sleep begins to take you, let the flicker of his presence, his strange kindness, his sharp insight, his gentle hope, be a small beacon in the night. Because, like Gojo, you too are strong. And like him, you are not alone. In a world teeming with conflict, ambition, and struggle for dominance, there exists a boy who carries himself not with force, but with stillness. Yo Asakura, slouching in posture, eyes half-lidded, voice soft and unbothered, is often mistaken for someone who doesn't care. But beneath his sleepy expression lies a serenity so deep, so unwavering, that it becomes a quiet kind of strength, disarming and enduring, while others race, shout, and clash to make their way forward. Yo walks slowly, calmly, content with where he is. And in that stillness lies his wisdom. Yo's belief is simple, that life is meant to be enjoyed, that the world is already burdened with suffering, and adding more hate, more urgency, more conflict only perpetuates a cycle of despair. Unlike the many warriors and shamans around him who are obsessed with victory and proving their power, Yo doesn't fight to win. He fights to protect his peace and the peace of those he loves. And when he does raise his fists, it is never out of pride or fury, but out of a quiet determination to stand between chaos and the people who cannot defend themselves. There's a moment in the story when Yo faces an enemy who is louder, angrier, and stronger in every visible way. Most people would tremble or retaliate, but Yo doesn't. He listens. He smiles gently. And he asks a question, not one meant to defeat, but to understand. It's a moment that reveals everything about his nature. He doesn't see people as threats. He sees them as souls, hurting, complicated, searching. And rather than attack, he opens a door, a space to be heard, a space to be healed. His wisdom lies in his ability to remain centered even when everything around him spins with chaos. He doesn't let others dictate the rhythm of his heart. He doesn't rush when rushed or panic when panicked. He holds firm to his pace, his breath, his sense of ease. It's not laziness, though many mistake it for that. It's intentional, a refusal to let the world pull him away from what he knows to be true, that the path to real strength isn't found in speed or anger, but in stillness. Yo's dream is not to become a great warrior, nor to rule over others, nor to reshape the world in his image. His dream is to live a quiet life, surrounded by nature, music, and the people he loves. And it's this dream, so unassuming, so gentle, that gives him the strength to withstand the storms that others can't. Because he isn't weighed down by ego. He isn't chasing validation. He knows what he wants, and that knowledge keeps him grounded when the wind rises and the world turns cold. He is often asked why he doesn't take things more seriously, why he doesn't push harder, train harder, fight harder. And his answer, though delivered with a shrug, carries profound depth. Because life isn't meant to be spent always striving, always clashing. There has to be time to breathe, time to enjoy the sunlight filtering through the leaves, time to laugh over a simple meal, time to watch the stars. In these small, quiet moments, Yo finds his center and teaches others to do the same. Even his connection with Amida Maru, his spirit companion, is not one of domination or control. It is a friendship, a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. Yo doesn't order, he asks. He doesn't demand, he listens. And through this bond, he shows that strength doesn't need to shout, that power doesn't need to crush. Sometimes, the greatest force is the ability to remain soft in a world that hardens everyone else. As the trials he faces grow heavier, and the path toward the shaman king grows darker, Yo never loses his essence. He remains calm even when others scream. He speaks softly even when others curse. He extends a hand even when others strike, and not out of naivety, but out of a belief that peace is possible. that no matter how broken someone is, they are still worthy of compassion. That even in the deepest shadow, light can find its way in. There is a stillness in Yo that is not stagnant, but steady, like a river flowing quietly between ancient stones. And those who walk beside him slowly begin to change. They stop rushing. They begin to breathe. They look at the world a little differently. Because Yo reminds them that it's okay to rest. It's okay to not be the strongest, the fastest, the most impressive. It's enough to be present, to be kind, to be at peace. And perhaps that is his greatest wisdom. That peace is not something found at the end of a war, but something cultivated with every soft step, every gentle word, every decision to choose kindness over cruelty. Yo embodies this truth, not with speeches or declarations, but with his way of living, with his quiet smile, with the way he looks at the sky and says, simply, "It's a nice day." So now, as the stars begin to shimmer beyond your window and the hush of sleep wraps around your thoughts, let Yo's wisdom linger in your heart. Let it remind you that stillness is not weakness, that slowness is not failure, that the softest souls can hold the heaviest burdens and still offer a smile. And as your breath settles into its quiet rhythm, may you feel the comfort of that wisdom, a whisper in the dark, a steady pulse beneath the noise. You don't have to carry everything. You don't have to move faster than your heart can bear. There is time. There is space. There is peace, if you let it in. And in the softness of this night, you can rest, knowing that, like Yo, you too can find strength in serenity and courage in simply being yourself.